Yeah, it's awesome to be here. Thank you, Dr. Cedarmark. Being here speaking for IAFNR is huge to me because functional neurology played a huge part. And back in 2014, it was my first keynote speech, and I spoke for the Neuro-Optometric Rehabilitation Association, NORA. And what I spoke about was synergistic therapies, how therapies done together are far greater than the sum of their parts. Specifically, I was talking about neuro-optometry and functional neurology, so it's really amazing to see these two modalities coming together. So, we've been talking about neural pathways, visual pathways, physiology, metabolism, like all sorts of aspects that are so important. But I want to remind everybody that there's a difference between who we are and what we are. Right? Who we are is this life force energy, this light, this radiance, this infinite essence that currently inhabits what we are. And what we are is this vessel, this hardware, this human brain and body that who we are currently is connected to and inhabits. And when who we are and what we are is truly connected, we have this integral human experience that's pretty amazing. Even when it's painful, it's awesome. Most of us take this for granted. I used to, but I don't anymore because there was a time when who I was and what I was were separated. When I was in a coma, I couldn't feel the tube down my throat that supplied oxygen to my lungs. I couldn't hear the beeping of the machines that were monitoring my vitals. And I didn't see my mother's heart break as she was told that I had less than a 10% chance of recovery beyond a persistent vegetative state. I had sustained a severe traumatic brain injury, and I was, had a whole laundry list of broken bones, lacerated organs, infections. I contracted MRSA and pneumonia, which are both life-threatening, and brain insults that my mom would hear rattled off every single day. She'd be like, okay, but he's gonna live, right? They'd be like, we don't know. So she stopped asking. Guess what happened? So I woke up and it looked pretty awesome. So months and months in the hospital, and as you see, I'm closing one of my eyes. It's diplopia. I have diplopia, I still do. Although neuro-optometry has really corrected it quite a bit. I went from a 9 diopter prism to a 4 diopter prism. And it kind of bounced between 4 and 5. But yeah, I didn't eat, walk, or talk for months. I was breathing through a tube in my neck. I was receiving nutrition through a tube in my belly. And my left hand was entirely flexed inward. And you can see how emaciated I am in this. I was skin and bones. I was eventually released to my mom's care where she could control the food that was being fed through my gastric feed. And she started giving me real food. Who'd have thought? And soon after that, I took my first steps. This is a huge deal. This is the first time I had walked without a walker in months. It's about 7 years ago. And for the 7-year anniversary of my brain injury, this is how I celebrated. See, that's vestibular rehab right there. I don't need your gyroscope. Yeah. So this is cool. Like, clearly there's been a lot of neurological changes with my brain in that time. I have some imaging of that I want to show you guys. So this is a few days after my brain injury. This is an MRI coronal view. You can see marked with the red arrows are the two lesions in the corpus callosum, axonal damage. And in 2016, I was lucky enough to get to go to the University of Pittsburgh to have my brain scanned with high definition fiber tracking, which uses DTI technology. Basically breaks groups of neurons and axon fibers down into 2.4 millimeter cubed voxels, so three-dimensional pixels. So this is my brain. And yeah, it's really cool technology. So 2.4 millimeter cubed voxels. So that's high definition right now. Mind you, there's 86 billion neurons in the brain. So each one of those voxels has thousands of neurons and axon fibers, but they tend to cluster in groups. The axons tend to run in groups, and they tend to get damaged in groups. So this is very, very useful technology. What's really cool is we can take one voxel in, say, the right motor cortex, and one voxel in, say, the cerebellum, and be like, show me only the fibers that connect these 2 points. And it'll take away everything else and show you just those, if there are any. So, and they'll also stop if there's breaks in there. So the implications in neurorehabilitation for this technology are, it's pretty cool stuff. I want to point something out, and I realize I can't do it from here, so let's see if I can do it like this. There it is. Okay. So we're going to do a little scrubbing here. Okay, where is it? There you go. Right in the middle, that's the central fissure, right? So these two sides of the brain should look fairly symmetrical. They don't. What do y'all notice? Come on.
The cerebellum on the right. The cerebellum.
So there's a little cerebellar, all right. And then what about the right occipital lobe? Yeah, it's missing quite a bit of volume. So as far as the cerebellum goes, that shows up in function. So that would be the left cerebellum that is frayed. Like think of it like rope, like the left cerebellum looks so much more frayed. So when we look at function, a neurological test, you do this as quick as you can. I call it the duckbill test. And this is as quick as I can do it on my left hand. And that translates to my leg and whatnot, and clearly doesn't stop me from doing just about anything. But that's up there. So I also had my brain scanned 6 months after this, and it was a research study at the University of Pittsburgh, and so they gave me some cognitive exercise to do. Basically, it was Brain HQ, which, if you're not familiar, is cognitive. It's like an app, and you do some cognitive like rehab type puzzles and stuff like that. And I don't isolate variables. I do not isolate therapies. You know, I spoke at NOR in 2014 talking about how therapies done together are greater than the sum of their parts. And so I was doing neurooptometry, I was doing low-level light therapy, hyperbaric oxygen, gyrostim, transcranial magnetic stimulation, using a lot of modalities, functional neurology, functional movements, many different aspects. And I didn't get a scan that looks like this one. However, I did talk to the researchers there, and they sent me this and told me that I had 40% more fibers in my corticospinal tract than before. So in 6 months, 40%, and as you know, that like corticospinal tract, that's bringing information in and out of the brain. Those are lines bringing stuff in and out. So that's amazing, and that was just 6 months. So this stuff probably works, you know. Mind you, they do say that they wanted me to be sure to let you know that these results are preliminary, and it's in the research stage. But that's pretty cool. So, see, how did I go from where I was to where I am? I'm often asked, how'd you do that? And really a lot went into it. But as I said, when I took my first steps, it was after starting to eat real food. So I would eventually be steered towards a nutritional protocol, and I started to regain some clarity. The protocol was an Apex leaky gut protocol, and the practitioner who steered me there was Dr. Thomas Culleton, a functional neurologist who you might be familiar with. And I started to regain some clarity, and I was like, whoa, what happened? Because I've been in a fog for a long time. The thing about being in a brain fog is you don't know you're in a brain fog when you're in a brain fog because you're kind of in a brain fog, you know? So as I came out, I was like, what happened? So I'm going through medical records, text messages, emails, trying to piece together what had happened. And at the same time, why did nutrition make such a big difference? So I'm relearning how to walk at the time, but we have the internet. So I'm listening to podcasts, watching videos, reading articles, reaching out to practitioners. I learned how to read peer-reviewed research, and I was eventually steered towards online courses. And I started taking online courses from excellent universities like the University of San Francisco, Cal Poly Tech, Johns Hopkins, University of Chicago, Duke University. I was essentially cherry-picking courses, creating my own major, because I need to learn how the brain works, how the brain's fueled, and how the brain learns so that I can give my brain the best shot to recover. I was studying like my life depended on it, because it kind of did, yeah. And so I recently, last year, I published my first book. So this is the culmination of the nutritional tools, because as I said, nutrition is very important. You know, nutrition is the building blocks. I've said this before, but like, I think of creating new pathways in the brain, either rebuilding old pathways or creating new ones, like building a bridge. What do we need to build the bridge? We need supplies and we need skilled workers. Supplies would be the nutrition, the brain building nutrition, the right kind of nutrition. Skilled workers would be the therapy, the targeted therapy, the right kind of therapy. So the neurooptometry, the functional neurology, the physical therapy, the occupational therapy, the speech-language pathology, all aspects of that. I also, the reason that the leaky gut protocol was working for me was because I was getting the supplies to the construction site. It was fixing the digestion, which allowed the nutrients that I was eating to actually make it to my brain so that I could utilize them. And then with the therapy, the targeted therapy, we also want to know the landscape. So we want to understand what brain we're working with. And that's where assessments of the brain is so important. So we really know each individual's neurology when we're doing the therapy on it. But the thing about nutrition is it's the supplies. Once we fix the digestion, we need the supplies for the brain. So that's what Feed a Brain is about. There are like gut healing protocols in there, but mostly it's about the nutrients needed for optimal brain function. Because when the brain is functioning optimally, it's repairing itself optimally. I mean, when what we are is functioning optimally, it's repairing itself optimally. I mean, that's the basis of functional medicine. Let's put our physiology in a state of optimal function, because what we are is really good at repairing itself. So I wanted to make sure this was. I wanted this to be the resource that I wish I had throughout my recovery. So I made it easy to understand. There's all sorts of nutritional guides and handouts that are simple to understand. You can print them out, take them to the grocery store. I have them on my phone so I can like reference them. And truth is, I'm not a doctor. You know, the only letters after my name are .com. So here's what some doctors are saying. You all know Dr. Mark Hyman. Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Bonnie Kaplan applauds me for citing so much good scientific research. And Dr. David Perlmutter says my ideas are absolutely in line with current neuroscience. And I wanted to make sure this stood up to scientific scrutiny. So there are over 450 citations throughout. And many other practitioners agree. You might recognize some of these guys, like this guy. He actually wrote the foreword to my book, and he's been a great support. Dr. Karazian has been an excellent support throughout my entire recovery. In fact, as Cedar Mark said, I was a case study in Why Isn't My Brain Working? It's on page 27, and I remember that because I was 27 when I fell from a rooftop water tower. And several others. And look, the reason all these practitioners support me is because I'm on a mission to evolve neurorehabilitation. And I think all of you are on that same mission, to evolve neurorehabilitation. And neurorehabilitation usually starts in the hospital. But what are we feeding people in the hospital? Because clearly, I think nutrition matters, which is why I wrote a book on brain nutrition. Here we go. This is the most appetizing one. Then a curry and some rice. Okay. This is hilarious. This is the cheese and tomato sandwich. And whoever posted this put tomato in quotes. I think they should put cheese in quotes too, or at least spell it with a Z, you know? And this one's good. The caption says, pineapple juice, an orange, and something I can't identify. And this is the pescatarian meal. Looks like breaded tilapia and like some butternut squash soup or something like that. So does anybody know where the hospital guidelines for their food come from? Does that look familiar? It should, because our tax dollars pay for that to be taught to our children. What's interesting is water is not addressed, but milk is. You milk with every meal, like, come on. So I learned the one on the upper left, you know, you eat a bunch of grains, very little fat. And then the next one makes no sense, except, you know, you eat about the same orange as green, and I don't even know, there's some guy climbing the stairs. And this one makes sense, but they all say the same thing. Eat lots of grains, eat very little fat, and drink your milk. So who's giving us these recommendations? Anybody know? Any guesses? Did I hear USDA? That's it, the USDA, right. Right, well, let's take a look at something. So I was wondering, what is the purpose of the US Department of Agriculture? So I went to their website, and here it is. We have a vision to provide economic opportunity through innovation, helping rural America to thrive. This, yeah, little conflict of interest, right? Economic opportunity. So, and this is in our hospitals. We're not looking for human health, we're looking for economic opportunity. So the USDA has been giving us recommendations since the 1940s, and they looked a little different in the 1940s. This is the original one. For health, eat some food from each group every day. And I don't agree with all these, like margarine and you know, dairy, bread, grains, cereals, all that. It's all still on there, but it says, you know, nothing's vilified and nothing's glorified. And at the bottom it says, in addition to the basic 7, eat any other foods you want. You're a human, you know how to eat. Like, we're the only species on this planet that's trying to figure out, what do we eat, right? So in 1984, this is the first graphical representation that really made sense, that was, you know, meme-worthy, to use the parlance of our times. But basically, it says 6 to 11 servings of breads, grains, and cereals. I don't eat 6 to 11 servings of anything in a day. And then they lumped fats in with alcohol and sweets, as if there's no such thing as an essential fatty acid, right? So let's take a look at what happened to America's health since then. So this is a graph created from information provided by the CDC. And this is BMI, body mass index, on the y-axis, and time on the x. And so I had a point before 1980 and after 1990. Where 1984 would land is right around there. And what you see is a huge increase to our BMI, which is a marker for obesity and overweight. What I also think is interesting is 25 to 30, I believe, is overweight. And so America has been overweight since the 1960s. You know, really, it should look a little more like this, or it should probably be way down there, right? So clearly, we're moving in the wrong direction, I would say. So we can't rely on the government recommendations, right? Because government recommendations are for economic opportunity. And hospital nutrition follows government recommendations. In fact, any institution that's government funded and that serves food is required to follow these guidelines. So remember, I was eating through a gastric tube. I was unable to eat conventionally. Can you imagine what the processed liquid formulas that are fed to patients who are unable to eat conventionally, what they consist of? Let's check it out. Here we go. Glucose syrup, sugar, milk protein concentrate, vegetable oil, soy protein isolate. And that's not one candy bar. breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. I have clients who come to me, they have a loved one receiving this stuff 5 times a day. If you have a loved one in hospice or in a nursing home who's unable to eat conventionally, I'm talking about them. I mean, people on death row have it better. At least they get last rites. You know, they get whatever meal they want. We have war heroes who are essentially, literally being fed fortified glucose syrup as their last meal. This is the standard of care. I'm gonna let that sink in for a minute. So let's talk about the standard of care. So it's coined for medical malpractice claims, and a medical malpractice claim requires that the defendant deviated from the applicable standard of care, which is defined in a medical malpractice case as the type and level of care an ordinary prudent healthcare professional with the same training and experience would provide under similar circumstances in the same community. And if they deviate from the ordinary same similar standard of care, liable to be sued. So I work with clients who often have a loved one in critical care, basically somebody who's going through what I've been through. So I'll work with clients who have a loved one as early as a coma throughout their entire rehabilitation process. And there's so much we can do in that time that is not part of the standard of care. And I have a 100% success rate coaching my clients in order to speak to their medical team, in order to implement practices outside of the standard of care. It works every single time.
Mine works.
Do you want to know how? Do you want to know? Yeah? You really want to know? All right. Don't ask. Honestly, don't ask. And I'm not saying like sneak behind their backs, like that. You know, that's what my aunt did while I was in the hospital. Actually, my aunt was getting into functional medicine. She's a nurse practitioner, and she started basically sneaking nutraceuticals into my gastric feed. But the thing is, I work with clients and we do that with the practitioner's assistance. So here's how that's done. So there's something called the tenets of medical ethics. Y'all are probably familiar with this. They're ethical principles in medicine, and the very first one is patient autonomy. The patient has the right to refuse and to choose their treatment. So I tell my clients, don't ask. Tell them what treatment you choose. Do them a favor. Tell them what treatment you choose. And work with them. Like, we don't want to create a battle between them, right? We want to have. There he is. Hello, sir. So yeah, we don't want to create a battle between the patient and the practitioner. We're on the same team. We want the patient to get better, right? But when you tell them what treatment you choose, you give them another tool to use, right? It's like the way the system's set up, it's like if diagnosis X, you can treat with Y or Z. And it's like unless they choose any other treatment. And then that treatment becomes available. And the thing about it is, like, yeah, patients can empower practitioners in this manner. And practitioners can tell their patients how to set them free. So like, you know, if there's a practice you want to do that's outside of the standard of care, you tell you, and you think will be beneficial for your patient, like, so tell them this, say, so there's this practice that I think will be beneficial for you, but it's outside of the standard of care. And I can't give it to you unless you specifically request it. So take a look, do your own research. You know, it's 2019, we have the internet, you can do your own research. Take a look and see if this is something you want to do, and then come into my office and say, this is the treatment I choose. After seeing this work over and over again, I realized that this is how we change medicine, through patient and practitioner education and empowerment. So I'm an author, and I'm very big into words and the etymology of words and things of that sort. And so I was thinking about what it means to be a practitioner. It means that you practice medicine, right? So what does it mean to practice? Here we go. Practice, the actual application or use of an idea or method. Sounds about right. We're actually applying what we're learning, right? And we've all heard practice makes perfect. But that's not true. If we practice doing the wrong thing or something the wrong way, we get really good at doing something the wrong way, right? So I've heard practice makes permanence, but that's not really true either. I mean, we all know the brain's plastic and it continues to be plastic and nothing's permanent. So I had a martial arts instructor who used to say, practice doesn't make perfect, perfect practice makes perfect. Yep, practice we get good at. So what are we practicing? What kind of medicine are we practicing? If we're practicing the ordinary, same, similar standard of care, we get really good at the ordinary, same, similar standard. So it's like the system's kind of rigged in order to keep us from evolving medicine. And I know you guys practice medicine differently, and I love neurooptometry, I love functional neurology, I love what y'all do, and that's why I'm here, always here supporting. And I want to see functional neurology and neurooptometry thrive, and it's tricky when I see like people trying to be on top, and it's like, you know what? We all need to work together. This is what I've been saying since Nora. Let's work together and build up these professions, So I know that you guys aren't part of the conventional care medical matrix, as I call it. But I'm sure you get clients who contact you who are in that position and they're not ready for neurorehabilitation through functional neurology, neurooptometry, or any other neurorehabilitative practices that are post-acute. I help those people. And it's not like I advertise what I do. I don't have like a Facebook ad campaign or anything. I'm almost entirely referral based. So I'm going to be completely transparent about my goals here. I want to help more people. So I want my book in your office, and I want my phone number in your Rolodex, or whatever, your contact list. So here's where I want you guys to pull out your phones. Pull out your cell phone, and I want you to text me. Send me a text right now. Send me a text with your name. Don't just take a picture of it. Send me a text with your name and your website or practice or whatever. And let's be in touch. Let's talk, and let's figure out how we're gonna improve neurorehabilitation together. The bottom line is I've regained so many of my abilities. I mean, I've regained my ability to walk, talk, eat, all of that. That's great. But I have the ability to write, to connect with people, to relate to people. And I have the ability to tell a story that gets attention. And because I have that ability, I feel I have a responsibility to positively affect the most lives in the greatest way. And you all are uniquely gifted. Each of you has abilities that I don't have. And when we work together, our abilities together are far greater than the sum of their parts. Our abilities together can really evolve neurorehabilitation and bring it into a conventional care view. And because our abilities together are much greater than the sum of them apart, we have a responsibility to come together. So send me a text. I mean, hopefully you did. And let's evolve into a rehabilitation. Let's go beyond the standard of care. Let's work together and let's revolutionize medicine. Thank you.